Alrighty then. Oh boy, where do I start on this? Well, while I turn this around to the proper direction, I'll talk about what I've done. So, for the last week, I don't work on anything during the week. I don't really have time. My job doesn't. I mean, I get home about 5:30 every day and don't really have time to come out and do stuff. So I came out this morning, looks like about 45 minutes ago, and I started cleaning up a couple of the parts I'm going to paint. I'm not going to paint everything, just the parts that you know, when I cleaned them off, they lost a large amount of their paint. We're going to discuss some things I found, and I'm going to do a zoom in here so you can see what's going on here. First thing is, I took off these I don't remember what they're called, crazy bars, whatever, and I ran into some issues. If you can see it here, you can see it looks like some nice ball of snot right there. That's glue of some kind, and that's what the only thing that was holding on the nut or the bolt that goes in there, tiny little bolt. The other thing is, in order to get these parts out from inside of here, I had to remove there's a nut, a nut and a little tiny itty bitty pin, which let's see here, is right here, and you see it's stuck on a piece of safety wire. And you notice there's another ball right next to it because that was from one side when it broke. See, it seems that when I can only assume my dad, I don't know, put this back together, when he had it apart, or whoever had it apart, they put a big old glob of some kind of glue or clear coat paint or something on the nut to keep it in place, which was very difficult to remove. I finally got it off by taking my soldering iron and heating up the nut, and was able to slowly and carefully work it off. One thing I've noticed about these parts is that this is apparently copper. Either it's copper or it's cast brass with a copper coating. In this little place where it wouldn't be seen, I filed a little bit, and you can see it's very shiny in there, and it's hard to tell what color, but I think that's copper. And everything was coated with a weird covering, and I don't know if that's because of the fluid I used to clean it, or if it was something in the paint, or maybe in one of the steps that they did to paint it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint these two pieces. I believe these are the only two pieces I'm actually going to paint. I'm going to leave everything else the way it is. I'm going to clean them off a little bit more. I may try to let me zoom out here a little bit. I'll probably try to polish up these wheels a little bit so they make better contact. And I'm definitely going to rewire this motor. I'm going to put all new wire on it, and apparently everything was in a sleeve at one time. so I'm going to put a new sleeve on it, and I'm going to rewire. I've watched a couple of videos on the E-unit and how to work on it, and since this works, I'm going to put it back in circuit. At least if the contacts are all good, and from the looks of it, it looks like they all are. So this E-unit, I will take it apart and we'll fix it. We're going to clean up these contacts here. I don't have new rollers. Might tighten up these springs a little bit. They seem kind of loose. Oh, here, you know, this piece, I probably will have to, I will probably repaint this piece. It's got a lot of paint flaking off of it, and I don't think it's an original part, but you know, somebody can probably tell me if it is. It just looks like it's made out of cast aluminum. Let's see. Yeah, it's not magnetic. So I think that'll be it for a little bit. I'll come back when I've painted the stuff and it's dried. Okay then. So I gave the parts a coating of paint in my random draft paint booth, and they're currently hanging up where you can't see them. I watched a couple of videos on how to take one of these things apart. It's not that particularly difficult. So, let's see. I said I'd talk some more about my dad. Well, let's see. Where did I leave off? I think I mentioned that he'd come to here when he was about 14, and he almost immediately fell in love with the fire department around here. He started basically cataloging all the fire stations and drawing a lot of the fire trucks. He'd also I believe he joined the a couple of fire buff clubs, and what else did he do? Oh yeah, he at one point he and some buddies of his founded the 211 Association. They incorporated it, and they had a club on the west side of town for a long time. I think it was there until a few years ago. They would go to fires, and they would make notes about all the way they laid the lines, and they would draw diagrams, and then they would I'm not sure what they would do with them. All I know is I found them in my dad's stuff when I was going through it. I posted it on a blog. I know they did a lot of these fires. Of course, I probably should have, you know, wrote this stuff down. My dad's always been big into fire trucks and trains. He's stand by. Let's see if this is any good. Yeah, I don't see any reason why this can't be used. Contacts just need to be cleaned a bit. Holes are all good. I think this will work just fine. The wires all need to be replaced. Some history, let's see, my dad was kind of a friend or acquaintance with the fire chief here. I can't say for certain that he was a close friend, but the fire chief definitely knew him. Back in the day, they had special permission from the fire department to go to fires, and they would actually help the firemen. They would do things that the firemen that would make it easier for the firemen. They would do things like roll up hose and control traffic. But mostly they took pictures, and they had a whole bunch of rules about how and what they could do and when. My dad was telling me about a guy who was in the club who broke one of the major rules one day by racing ahead of the fire trucks and trying to control traffic at each stoplight on the way. According to my dad, he wrote the response cards, or designed the response cards that the fire department here used up until 1985, when I guess they went to a computer system. He used to go down and hang out at the alarm room. There's a picture of me and my sister out of focus in the kind of out of focus in the alarm room. We went, we used to go down to the training academy. And watch them do their thing. I have some video of that. Boy, these are really thin and flimsy contacts. You can see why they might be a problem. Let's see where. And for the most part, when my dad and I, we did a lot of stuff that had revolved around fire trucks. I mean, he did do a lot of train stuff. He was a member of a fire buff club. He was a member of a train buff club. We used to go to meetings all the time. When that kind of stuff was really super popular. I remember as a kid going to people's houses whose houses were completely floor to ceiling, up and down each wall. There were basically trains. Lionel, American Flyer, I don't know what else there was back then. And I remember seeing people, I mean, they had, their houses had train layouts, and the entire room in the house was a train layout. They had all the walls on there covered in trains on shelves. They had rooms that were nothing but trains, with trains piled up in stacks. Let's see here. I remember going to many people's houses like that. Let's see here. How do we want to do this? I can tell some people are probably like, oh my god, why is he messing with that? He's never worked on a train before in his life. Oh, well, simple fact is that all the things I've found with it that are wrong kind of precludes this thing really being worth a lot of money. I mean, other than its parts. And contrary to what a lot of people might think, this particular train doesn't have a lot of sentimental value, because don't remember, he probably didn't have it when I was a kid. And over time he got rid of most of his Lionel stuff. You know, some people aren't going to agree with what I'm going to say, but when Lionel's quality went down, he was very disappointed. That's why he jumped on the MTH bandwagon, because he loved how their quality was. I'm not going to argue with people about their quality because I don't have an iron in that fire. I've never owned any Lionel stuff other than this, and don't have any MTH stuff other than the stuff that my dad had, and basically sold most of that. So I'm soldering this according to how the schematic says. It says that there's yellow wires that go from this tab to the brushes on the motor, and so I'm going to solder a couple of yellow wires to these tabs. Suppose you wouldn't want to do this too many times. These tabs would metal fatigue. So I guess I gotta make sure this is correct. So it shows a yellow wire coming from this one, and it's going to be about how long? It's going to be from approximately here. It's going to go up, over, and so we're going to give it about an extra 3 or 4 inches because it rolls easier than it stretches. So that's one. And so the next one is there's supposed to be a yellow tab or yellow wire going to this center tab. So we're going to do that. Let's see, this is going to be, oh, look at that, I've lost the E unit already. There it is. It's going to be like that. So coming in from the back side would be fine. Let's see, some of the names that I can remember from the people we visited was a guy named Dick Rowe. I'd like to apologize for crushing his foot when I was 10. Probably wasn't a good idea to let a 10-year-old boy run the gate lift on a moving truck. And, you know, probably he should have paid a little more attention. But I have felt bad about it all these years. see, setting these fingers correctly. And not having them bent wrong is going to be really fun. There we go. So there's our yellow wire. The two yellow wires that go to the brushes. We'll make these the same, approximately the same length. Damn magnets. Okay. So that's those two. Alright. Another name that I remember is a guy named Berkey. His name was probably Burke, but my dad called him Berkey. He was actually still alive up until a few years ago. One of the times my dad came to town, we visited him. He was probably in his 90s. Still had his layout exactly like it was when I had first seen it as a kid. According to my dad, we visited him a lot, but I only remember possibly one time. Okay, what do we got here? Okay, so that was a giant pain in the butt. Mostly getting this back together. And then of course I forgot to make note of certain connections where they went, so I had to try and find a unit online that was put together. So I believe this is correct. Everything moves freely. I'm going to be testing it at some point. I believe it's wired correctly. I have 4 wires coming off of this, and the one I found online that you can buy has 4 lines coming off of it, and all connected in the way mine is. So we have this black wire goes to here, and then it goes right there. One yellow wire goes to the center, this yellow wire goes to these set of fingers, and this black wire goes to this set. Then there's a red wire, and this is my colors, that goes to the other side of this solenoid, and then I've attached it to here so that it won't move around and break off. Had to peen these over, hopefully it'll stay. The other side was peened over like that. I have to get some clarification on the wiring, because as you can see this is a bit of a mess, and the original wires, the switch was bypassed, so another thing I got to do is clean this up a bit. I am not going to take it apart. I don't know of any reasons why I really need to. Oh, that's interesting. Oh maybe there is a reason to take it apart. If the motor comes forward, it hits. Let's see what I can see in here. I don't know if this is missing a... That might be the source of the chatter I was hearing. We'll see what happens when it's put together. The brushes are making good contact. Somebody chowdered them up a bit here. All the windings look good. There's a wire going here, wire going here. This is one of the yellow wires. You could just barely tell that. And this is the other yellow wire going to a brush. So what I'm probably going to do, well, I don't know. I don't know, this is going to take some figuring out. I don't know how much of it is, or how accurate it is that it matches the drawing. I need to see if I can find any pictures or anything online from someone who's actually got one of these wired up correctly, because I don't know what goes where. Can't trust the original, or what I found, because it was you know, it had been bypassed. Let's see here. Clean off some of this garbage on my fingers. Oh, here's something. I was using this. This is a hammer my dad made. I believe he made it, or he claims to have made it, in high school metal shop class. To the best of my knowledge, he has never ever used it. In fact, since I got it, I've actually started using it. It hangs on my bench and I use it quite a bit. Works really nice. He just never used it. Never displayed it, it was just around. Anyway, so what do we got here? Well, let's look at the parts that got sprayed. Looks like I missed a little bit. I'll have to hit that again. It's very difficult to spray this stuff. The paint comes out way more paint than you would expect. Let's see here. Oh yeah, definitely got to hit that again. And this might need a little bit of a couple spots here and there. I think I'm going to give these another touch-up of paint and then shut it down for today. This is Saturday, and I'll just work on this again tomorrow when I'm less aggravated. Okay, we are back. It is Sunday now. And I posted on the O-Gauge Railroad Radio 4 or Radio O-Gauge Railroad forum question about wiring this up, because even though I've got the schematic, there are certain things about it that are not clear. It shows ground, but it doesn't say what ground is. One would assume that ground is the metal frame, but I don't want to assume. I want to know. And yes, this would be ground. The other thing is there's an unusual thing about this that I didn't quite understand, and I still don't, but we'll go with it and we'll see how it works. And that is that you have a wire coming from one of these fingers that goes to the case, and the case will be grounded to the chassis. It doesn't show that on here. It shows this. Well, that's what that is. It's just not clear. It's not the best wiring diagram. If this is going to be part of it, then it kind of needs to say that. I still not really sure how this works. I mean, I expect that this would short out, but that's supposedly how it runs. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, basically the headlight connects to here, and then there's a wire that goes from here to the contact slider, these dealy bobs. And of course there's another wire that goes from this contact slider to this one, so that you always have it, hopefully one good contact. The other thing that wasn't really mentioned, and I guess I have to figure it out, is one must assume that this is the field winding. I mean, this is the field well, yeah, the field windings. And one wire goes to here, but then the other one apparently goes to ground. Yeah, I guess. I'm going to ohm this out and make sure that these two connections are the windings. I'm getting rid of all this wire. It is just crap. It's thin, it's single-stranded, it's going to break. It's ugly, it's greasy. Oh, ha! There was something I completely missed, because I didn't know it was an issue. The motor couples to this worm gear with a little rubber disc with holes in it, and I didn't know this. I mean, I knew when I took this apart, I was wondering how that worked, and I found this little piece of hard plastic which actually fit in here, and apparently that's all this little chunk of old rubber was the only thing coupling the motor to the worm gear. So I went online to see how much one of these things would cost, and I found two listings. One was $8 and one was $13 or $12, and I was like, screw that, it's just a piece of rubber. So what I did was I measured this, and I then drew in AutoCAD I drew it in AutoCAD and printed it out 1-to-1, and then using a leather punch, cut holes in the rubber that I had from an old record player mat that was actually pretty thick. It took me 2 attempts, and it's not perfect, but I believe it will work good enough that you know, it'll work fine. I have seen other people who've made similar ones themselves. The big problem is getting the center lined up correctly, and so this is what I made, and I know that looks wonky, but it will work. The idea is just to dampen, so it's not smacking into this. It's got just it acts like a shock absorber. Now the fun part is I don't know if this will fit in here, and I may have to trim it down. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to trim it down, because I didn't have any measurements at all on how big it was. So it looks like I got to trim it quite a bit. But it should work. Considering the fact that I don't have a layout, and I'm probably never going to have a layout. I don't have the room for one. I had one at one time. It was HO gauge, and I used it occasionally. I quickly became bored with making trains go around and round in circles, even with a switching, you know, stuff and whatever. Just kind of one-dimensional or two-dimensional. So I'm going to be starting to put this back together. Oh, hey, that's right. So all the parts are painted and dried. Let go. Well, I won't take that off on the air. This is just Rust-Oleum flat black. Worked out pretty good. It's very smooth. It almost feels waxy. But good coverage. Sprayed on very well. Didn't drip as much as I thought, because it was just going on too much. I'd had to give it just barely any little spurts of paint. So we got the cow catcher, or whatever the hell they call it now. The paint that was on here, I dropped this in a thing of denatured alcohol, and with a wire brush, whatever the paint was, it just came right off. It didn't run off, it just flaked off. It was strange. And now when I put this back together, I will not be doing it all on camera, because there's a lot of fiddly bitting and fixing, and I know I'm going to have problems because some of the parts are iffy and possibly broken. So if this even does anything at all, if it even runs, because I don't know, I mean, sure I can get parts, but I was looking at some of the Hudson parts online, and they're just absolutely insane. I don't know if they're new old stock or what, but like this piece right here, $500. I mean, honestly, $500. Even if it's original, I don't know about that. I guess if you're really hot and bothered by this kind of thing, you'll pay anything, but not me. So I'm going to turn off the camera for a little bit, and I'm going to whittle away at this to make it fit better, and I'm going to probably, I'm going to get all the tape off of this, and I'm going to see about putting everything back together on this, and this is the one that's going to be a real problem. So back it a little bit. Okay, real quick update on some of you who are keen-eyed and will probably notice that the transmission is now on correctly. I had it on backwards. I have removed the tape from the parts, and I've also removed all the wires from the motor. These are indeed the two motor windings, or field windings. Motor field, it shows going to ground. Let's check that. See, that's another thing on here. This shows the motor field, one side going here, and then the other side going to this, and that's not the case. I'm not sure why it shows that. Obviously one side would go to ground, but I guess we'll just have to run a wire there, because it's certainly, the chassis, it certainly isn't going there itself. Yeah. So this is what I mean by not clear. Maybe clear if you've worked on one of these all your life, and if you're a kid or something, but to someone who just opened one up and doesn't know anything about it, only has some electronic knowledge, that doesn't make much sense. Okay, now we're going to try and get things back together. Man, oh man, I swear, I won't ever do this again. So, I got one side back together. I still, the way this goes together, looks like it doesn't really work, but that's how the pictures were. You probably can't see it, but originally, probably my dad had put this shoulder bolt through here, and then he had just glued it. Well, that ain't gonna work. Luckily, I happen to have a whole pile of these itty bitty tiny nuts and screws, and they are close enough, if they're not the correct threads, they're close enough. That and a little bit of red Loctite should keep it from coming off. I test fit everything on this side, and it goes together. There's a nut on this, but I don't know if this is kind of weird. This screw goes through this here and then screws into this, and then I guess there's a nut on the end. It's kind of weird. Total elapsed time since I started this morning, 1 hour 42 minutes. I think this is evil and possessed. It has been 50 minutes since I turned off the camera, and I have been just trying to get basically this arm in, and as you can see, there's just a screw in here instead of the nut. I'm also convinced that there's a very good chance that this arm is not correct and this arm is not correct, and they don't even match from side to side. One seems to be chrome plated and the other one seems to be nickel plated. However, it is back together, and for now I'm going to set this aside in its horrible evilness, and yeah. I had to use a lot of red Loctite. Let's see. On this side, the shoulder bolt fit, and one of the nuts I had fit. But I think this is probably too short. Whatever this lever is called in here isn't shaped right. I thought maybe they were reversed, but they're not. I think they may have come from some other train. I don't really know. I just know that what a giant pain in the butt that was. Oh, there's the other nut. Good, I can put that on. You can spend an hour doing that. Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna go take a break, because all of this stuff, it's just little fiddly junk, tiny little pieces, trying to make them fit. My hands are all cramped. Yeah. Stick a fork in me. I am done for today. I did not get to wiring the locomotive at all. I basically spent the last, I don't know, probably almost an hour working on just getting this and this on, and everything on here working approximately correctly. I got these on. Everything's covered in oil because the oil leaked out of the transmission. I'm not going to refill it. I'm not going to lube it with any kind of grease or anything, because other than I may run this once or twice just to see that it works, it'll probably never be run again as long as I own it. I will probably stick a piece of paper in here explaining what's going on with it, because I wouldn't want anybody who got this thing in the future to be really, really, really mad. Because I can tell you right now, if I had spent any amount of money on this thing, I would not be happy right now. So thankfully, I didn't spend any money on it. I think that's it. I'm beat. I don't even know what time it is. Oh God, it's only noon? Well, I get up at 5. Later.